could do it, right?
Yeah.
But you have to like do all these strap-on thingies here and there, and you gotta,
Yep.
check if the port has been used by a different thing. You have to manually get into the command line and close the port, and
Yeah. No. No,
you have
thanks. Well, that's up.
interesting. What is it on? It seems to be all working pretty well.
Okay.
On Odysee, it's showing me. So yeah, hey everyone for tuning in. I'll do the official hey at some point. We gotta, right?
Yeah.
But you have to like do all these. It is working on Odyssey. That was just a weird little bug at the beginning. I'll have to mention it to the peoples. But yeah, we have one watching on YouTube, Army of One, right? Remember when the Army used to have those ads, the Army of One?
Yeah, that was going.
I mean, I'm not sure if I agree with the message, but I think that was a great message of,
Yes.
you want to be more than just a mere mortal. Go do this.
Right.
And then Army of One was just like,
branding.
yeah, you want to be one with the Borg. It's like, what?
Do you know what Army of One came from?
No.
It's based on it's not MK Ultra, but it's a similar, like it's super weird, the story that went into becoming an Army of One. The guy that came
Yeah, and what are the things that have been since? It's been like, what now is it like something about heroes or something, or
you know what? I don't Google anything about the Army, so I'm not getting any ads anywhere.
Yeah, I will tell you, you and me both, brother. My Army Googling days are over. All right, let's just hit off with the intro and then just roll right into the show. So hello friends and new friends. It is I, the Desert Lakes Joel Valenzuela, whatever the hell you want to call me. And I'm joined by the wonderful Wuckert Jr. How's it going, man?
I'm doing quite well, Joel. Good to see you.
Yeah, and welcome everyone to Friday. It's it's a good day, podcast day. Always the highlight of the week, at least for me. But maybe that's because I get to do what I want and talk smack, and then sometimes people even just pay me for it, which is kind of weird. But I do appreciate that part. So. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a link in here that goes to Odysee, where you can watch on Odysee, which I always encourage people to watch on the more blockchain area over there. And so, as much as I like Kurt, and as much as I like people to be able to talk to him, today I'm gonna paywall him. So if you want to ask Kurt a question, you got to go to cointr.ee/thedesertlinks, drop in a little donation. I think I have BSV in there too, by the way. I just know BSV people just don't give me any money because they're stingy fuckers. But anyway, so you go there, you leave a message with the donation, and then I'll drop down this little menu, this little yellow thing you see down there. But if you're watching in Odysee, you can just type out a little chat. And yeah, so without further ado, let's talk all the nonsense going on. So first off, how have you been, and how's the crypto world been to you over the last few months or since we last talked?
Well, so I'm actually doing quite well. We just had a baby girl, so I have a 3-week-old daughter.
Congratulations!
Which is exciting. Thank you. She's my second child. My first child, Ronan, is going to be 2 this summer, and he loves his little sister, which was, we were concerned about that being an issue. So all's good on that front. So pretty much everything else is, stuff that I can deal with, given that, well, she was training in between the pregnancies, and then surprise, but yeah, generally good. Life is good. The cryptosphere stuff, I mean, what a wild market. I'm a BS. Ultimately, things have been good. I've now been full-time with CoinGeek for about 6 months, and that's kind of a fun gig. So, I'd probably be a multi-millionaire had I just stayed in BTC and done nothing with my time. But good to great on all fronts. I really like the CoinGeek people, and I'm really excited about what's being built on BSV. So I'm good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, all that sounds good. Just the mentioning of the multimillionaire type thing is like a great, like, it's a great kind of say. Like, people always tell me this, by the way. They're like, you have been in crypto for how long? It's been, 8 years about. this
Yep.
September, I think it'll be 8 years. And, I got like point 0.1 something Bitcoin for my part in a pizza or whatever. And that today
Yep.
would be worth, $5,000, 4.5, $5,000. I haven't checked the prices today, but it'd be worth a
Yep.
lot of money. And people just say, do you remember when Roger Ver did that whole, most of the stuff he says tends to be, good or at the very least on message, just very.
Yeah. Sure.
And one time when I, I respectfully think he put his foot in his mouth a little bit is when he went after Andreas Antonopoulos, who I don't think the choice to go after him is necessarily a bad thing. I have my own little
No.
gripes here and there, but just saying like, oh, if you actually believed in Bitcoin, you would have a bunch, you'd be rich, you wouldn't have to ask for donations. And it's like, yeah, that kind of hit me because when I was broke when I got my first Bitcoin, I was using, so then he had the buffer to have some left over when he spent it,
Yep.
and I just didn't. And so, yeah, it kind of
Yep.
reminds me of all that whole thing where I could be a multimillionaire several times over. Things had been slightly different, or then at the same time, if I had done it if I had done it to try to get rich, then I would not have known about it enough to do it. The only reason I was
Right.
in it to begin with, I'm just like, oh, peer-to-peer digital cash. This is like cool magic internet money no one can control. I love this. I'm gonna just spin because I was making these heart first, brain second kind of
Sure.
choices. And I guess it's probably kind of the same with you too, right?
Free and to have better relationships based on proof of work and all these different things. And like the earning money aspect, like the invest and all that, I was like, oh shoot, like this is crazy, And then the bear market that came after it, I was like, oh, okay, maybe that was just I actually did pretty well in 2017 under the assumption that like, I should just accumulate more Bitcoin. And I also got into Ethereum and Monero at the time, like 2015 and 16. I got into those things. So those things did well for me too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I even now do some consulting and stuff like that. But like, I really believe in like earning your wealth through proof of work. So to me, it's just kind of
It seems to have cut off for me for a second. Hold on. One moment, everyone. Let me just make sure everyone can hear me before I start talking about all my problems I've been having. Look back at the dashboard, make sure everyone can hear. Say something again.
testing.
There we go. We're all good. Yeah. So,
Okay.
so to apologize to everyone. So I have this USB splitter and all this stuff that like way too much goes into this little crappy laptop I've been using. And so basically would you mind repeating some of the sentiments, the greater sentiments that you've been doing?
So yeah, basically similar to you. I always thought of the investment thesis of Bitcoin is that it is a cash system that allows us to create other value, and then you can profit in Bitcoin from the work you do. And so I've worked in startups, I've done some consulting and that kind of thing. The money he earns when possible,
Mm-hmm.
and that's about it. So whatever. I'll certainly never be like a Mike Novogratz type or
Mm-hmm.
Pomp or some of these guys, and that's okay with me. I'm having fun being me.
Ooh. All right. I think I might have
Front, right,
another small
left.
disruption. You still
I
there?
can't hear you.
No. Yeah. It appears. There we go.
I do hear you again.
Yeah, there we go. It appears that I had a little brush with my microphone thing right here, and I just have to remember, sit here, don't touch the damn thing. So if I'm slower on the uptick or whatever on these things. So talking about the get richy thing, reminds me of, yeah, you could have been very pal back here,
Yep.
like.
Yeah, the real store value.
So the real store value. I remember the really store of WoW, and they really
Yeah.
took WoW to new levels. It's crazy because I remember Doge from back in the day, and then I just remember it was like an abandoned project until like 2018 or something. I saw some, and then but even so, there was always people that had a bunch of Doge and just like liked it for the nostalgia, and then every once in a while I'd do this epic pump on Musk, not Moist, our buddy Elon Musk, decided he was going to just start talking about it because it's part of the culture, and he's a little bit of a nerd. He just like, oh, Doge, and then all of a sudden, boom, goes up to the moon. They could do this kind of stuff, and then it's just like, and then I don't know, but these days it's become to an entirely different level. Like, it's not just been, motherfucker won't shut up about it. He just keeps on doing. But then these energy reasons, and then right away, just goes right over there and just says, we're gonna take Doge and we're working with their developers and all this kind of nonsense. So, what's your hot take on that?
First of all, Doge doesn't have developers. It's, I mean, it's been a dead project for years. Like, nobody's developed it at all. There are gaping security holes in the protocol that are at least 5 years old at this point. Stuff that was patched many years ago, but these problems still exist in Dogecoin core. Because so I get this group of friends that I talk to privately. We have a group chat, and we were all kind of talking about this like maybe 6 months ago. I power and all this stuff. Like, in theory, we could just take over Dogecoin. Like, we could make some pull requests. Like, we could fix the problem. Like, see if we can, do some of the stuff that's going on in BSV. Like, just blow out the op return and do just mess with it, just to almost make a joke about it, but whatever. And then to see Dogecoin exploding now, and it's like, the typical fee to send Doge is more than one Dogecoin. So it's like, well, that's a problem. Like, it indicates permanent inflation coin and that kind of stuff too. So like, Doge is a fun project. I always thought Doge was cool because exactly there was a Dogecoin NASCAR, and like, that was when I was still kind of new to the Bitcoin scene, and I was like, wait, what? How could somebody buy a NASCAR with Dogecoin? Like, it just didn't really occur to me what had occurred there. And, whatever, but, or SpaceX or his other, his tube technology company or whatever the hell he's doing underneath LA and all of that. His companies wouldn't even exist. They wouldn't be profitable if it wasn't for his constant like stock manipulation tactics.
Yeah.
So, this is just adds one more thing. Like, the Bitcoin and Doge thing is just like, it's Elon being Elon. Like, he's using his projects, but I don't know. I think Elon's kind of a fake news kind of guy. I mean, he's the perfect guy for this generation. People that don't really want to work and don't really understand value, and I think that's
yeah. It's interesting because I do have sort of mixed feelings about him, because on the one hand, there's the positive side of it, which is he's pushed a lot of things forward that I'm glad are for where they are now. Like, I'm glad SpaceX is there instead of NASA, or NASA just doing nothing and soaking up
for sure
government money, like only government money, like a sponge, rather than some government. Car revolution specifically, but I do think that he's pushed cars forward, period.
Sure.
And people seem to really love product for the, without all these subsidies. Probably not. Then what are the other car companies getting as far as some kind of a candid face for, I wouldn't say, definitely not libertarian ideals, because there's been a lot of non-libertarian ideals in there, but for a few common sense type things like, like, these are the numbers, let's into crypto has been, well, I thought it was like just good. Now I'm like, I don't know where the calculus is at this point. And of course, on the other side, then there's all like the bad stuff, and the whole like carbon tax thing is just horrendous. But and all the I'm gonna blow so much rocket dust into the atmosphere all the time, but Bitcoin mining though, which is a little bit interesting.
Yeah, ignore my lithium mines, please.
Yes,
but Bitcoin mining.
Yeah.
So BTC is the most inefficient use of electricity that I can think of. It basically doesn't do anything. Like, you can transact on it, kind of. Like, if you follow all the rules just right, you're securing value and all. Like, I really hate that narrative. On the flip side, Bitcoin, as it was originally envisioned, and then now how I believe is implemented specifically in BSV, has a fantastic utilization of that same electricity. So at less than 1% of the hash rate of BTC, you're able to do like tens of thousands times more transactions per second if you wanted to. And it's like, okay, well, that's actually disruptive. That's, you're able to do X amount of functions more for each thing. Like, I'm not an environmentalist, but I'm a big fan. But I would say that he's wrong about Bitcoin as a technology. That, proof of work, in
Mm-hmm.
my opinion, is the most important aspect of money. The future of money. In my opinion, you can't get around it.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it's one of those things too where I think people keep trying to get, like, at some point there was a turnover effect where anyone who is not a salty Bitcoin maximalist basically started to say that, got in this idea that we need, it seems like there's this weird like time where everyone just like, no, it's proof of stake now of course, here's the thing that I don't, so first off, here's the thing I don't know, right, is, for example, like obviously proof of work, the reason all this, and the energy expenditure exists is to secure the network, really, and the processing power of transactions on top of that. But when you think about proof of stake that does not do any of that stuff, it doesn't have that impact, but then you still have to process transactions. What I'm wondering is what happens if you have, like, what would the environmental impact, or whatever, the energy usage impact be of a pure proof of work chain versus a pure proof of stake chain? Obviously, the proof of work one will take up more, but will it be significantly more? Like,
actually, I would argue that I
mhm.
mean, if we could replace those things, like those have a huge carbon footprint, way bigger than Bitcoin mining. And so and here's the problem is that BTC has this obsession with this need for hash power to continuously rise, just like they have this need for the price to continuously rise. Security risk.
Yeah.
So right now, the difficulty on BTC is so high that if it were to have like let's say it were to drop by 60% very
Hmm.
quickly, it would be impossible to find a block. You'd be
Well,
in
we
a
saw
position
that
where
recently
there's
with like a 25% drop.
exactly. Imagine if it was another extra bunch of exahash. Like it's a big problem. Like if you can't find a block, you can't settle any BTC, and then if like it just grinds to a halt at that point. And
Yeah.
I don't mean like, oh, it's slow. I mean it's literally ground to a halt. Nobody can transact. So there's a real problem there with the amount of hash power, and it's a planned network where there's this arbitrary thing in place, this 1 megabyte block size
Mm.
limit that flies in the face of the free market of Bitcoin's total network economics, and you've created a permanent subsidy that then screws up the incentives of the network, that makes it insecure, that the pursuit of profit, and I use greed in a good way, but
Hmm.
like the greed of miners is leading to a security problem when it should lead to a security solution. And it's because it really needs to be looked at for what it is. So to to the point, Elon is wrong about Bitcoin, but he's right about the problems in BTC. And it's silly that he's looking at Dogecoin as a solution, but
Yeah.
ultimately it plays to his ignorance. I mean, you can't expect the guy to just understand everything that we've all been through for the last
Of
12
course.
years with Bitcoin and all these altcoins, but if he cares, like it would make sense for him to like maybe bring in a committee of people from various development groups and advocacy groups and different things, because clearly he's got a lot of weight in the marketplace. So uh
Yeah, and that's the thing about, like, I'm just thinking about mining long term. This is just a pure proof of work kind of scenario.
mhm.
Obviously, it's profitable to mine because of all the money you get from the block reward. At some point,
Mhm.
that money from the block reward goes down, or rather, and also the future valuation gains of those things, because you can mine at a loss and then hopefully it goes up later, right? The
Yep.
future gains of those will be very much, tapering off. At that point, you have a lot less hash rate, and that's the thing I kind of was like learning with the BCH BSV. So you can have like 10, say, like, maybe be a little ridiculous here, but like say 10% of Bitcoin's available hash rate is running at any one time. And
Yep.
so, as in using up energy. So you could actually have a pretty low, easily attackable network kind of thing. But then if someone decides to come in and start 51% attacking or something crazy like that, then a bunch of other stuff comes out of the woodwork and just makes sure their investment is secure. But it's not, not all the time. And then at that point, it's just what are the total fees processed by the network, and is it profitable to mine based on them? How many people do you think will start building hybrid miner heaters in cold areas, right? And then they'll just heat the house, and it'll be a little more expensive to heat the house than otherwise, but let's just say in this future scenario, the fees that they'll get by running miners and processing transactions will make up with that, and then you'll just have like excess electricity being used as
30 feet down into the crust of the earth and build your mine subterranean, create a giant dome. You can have an internal like gardening bio. Didn't have an incentive to do otherwise. And I think it's the other point that Elon doesn't understand, is that the real problem with like global warming, or whatever we're calling it, the need for electric consumption that may or may not be bad for people. However, if the oceans could be sold to people and it was like, well, you own this part of the ocean, you're allowed to profit from its existence. So it's just like, it's this tragedy of the commons that exists in electricity production, and the way to rethink really creative ways to generate electricity in a way that is not just cleaner, but it's cleaner because of this profit motive. You need it to be more efficient,
of course.
And so, that like what a gigantic help that is, that Bitcoin created this whole new incentive model that gives people a reason that wouldn't otherwise exist to fix the problem. It's
hit these two. So this is the super chat one, which is, hi Joel and Kurt, congratulations on having a second kid. For Kurt, I have not had any. Probably unlikely, but what do you guys think might be the consequences in the crypto market if Ethereum market cap surpasses Bitcoin? Thanks one time. Why don't you go for that one? I have some ideas, but
I support really any blockchain supplanting BTC. And the reason for it is I believe that like the entire culture of the BTC maxis is frankly dangerous for society. And the fact that they have been so successful with their narrative, and then also having this number one spot, just keeps them continually emboldened. But they talk about this like living in the citadel, and the poors all work for them because they're no coiners, and they're building an impenetrable, vicious hierarchy with themselves at the top. And it's like they talk about it in this sort of libertarian sense, but it's like the absolute worst scenario that I can think of is them basically being like the citizens of Elysium, and the rest of us are dying here on the surface of Earth.
Yeah, the rest of us are. And then who's going to be Matt Damon in that equation?
I don't know. I guess it could be me.
Who's going to be illegal immigrant yet somehow white person Matt Damon?
You're right.
Which that was a very strange.
Like Ethereum at all, for the record, but it would be good for any coin to knock BTC down a slot at least, because like they need to know that they can bleed. I think they
need bleed.
Yes, but it's like you learn a lot in those situations, and it's like they have so many bad ideas, but they keep being rewarded by the marketplace for them, and it's just it's dangerous. It's bad news. So
there's nothing quite as awesome as seeing what's been produced by a loser. I don't mean a loser. No, and I don't mean a loser like a shitty person or a shitty project. Yeah. I'm saying someone who has lost, and they're trying to come back. The comeback kid. That's why everyone likes these comeback stories. And they're not always realistic, of course, but there's nothing quite like being down and out to make those like innovative gears just turn in your head and come up with cool shit. And that's like a number one mentality that doesn't need to have. Like you start to sniff it. Yeah, what is this? Privilege? Oh, it's like you start to smell these like So like for example, right here is my Bitcoin Lightning node, which I've learned so much, and I'm not gonna talk. Maybe I'll talk shit about Lightning, but I won't talk shit about my experience and like delving into it because it's been invaluable. But like Lightning, I genuinely believe a lot of people are using it, trying to, because they want, this is what they think Bitcoin needs to do to send and receive money. They think this is what it needs to do, and a lot of the bumps along the way, like tons of Lightning infrastructure, just was not really workable during that big hash rate dip. Like some of these wallets, like because that's like, oh, it's number one. Well, like literally, the reason I'm into Bitcoin, into Lightning, is because it's probably the best way to send BTC. And if you need to send that coin in particular, you're kind of stuck. Sending crypto transactions is a completely different thing. It's so I see like those lack of, for example, the thing that blows my mind that no one's talking about, everyone's talking about with Lightning, oh, security flaws, oh, this and that, all these other things that don't matter really much. The thing that matters the most for the UX is liquidity and channel balancing. Like, and I'm sure you've done your research on this, and I don't want to like bore you too much, but basically, if I want to send you money, you have to have enough inbound liquidity to even receive my money. And so if I have a channel with you and with someone else, I can't send my whole balance to you if half of it is in their channel. I have to like literally on-chain transaction, and like that stuff is, it's never gonna work. Now compared to, let's just say, again, I'm not a big L2 like scholar, but people have said like side chains, like for example Matic or something like that, that you once you're on L2 you can just send it, blah blah blah. If they needed to survive, they'd find a way to make Lightning work like Lightning, like really work. Absolutely. But it's that number one spot, just like the same, oh, dude, I know where this is coming from. It's that number one spot poison in the brain.
Absolutely.
And
they're not hungry. They don't have to.
He says, talk about Nano. I know I push it hard, but I really think it's a great coin. Lacks privacy, but there might be ways to making it work out around that in the future. I'd be happy to talk a little bit about Nano for sure. First, Kurt, do you know much about Nano in terms of like how it actually works?
Yeah, I mean, they utilize an acyclic graph technology. So it's the DAG. Is that they don't really scale up until they have achieved a certain amount of scale as a rule. This is why like Hashgraph and IOTA have had to have like a centralized Oracle node to hold the network up. I don't know Nano well enough to know if they have had to do a similar thing, but I would presume they do based on what I know about the technology. I'm a big believer in like DAGs are cool. They're not a bad thing, but if you overlay a DAG network on top of a proof of work, then you don't have that problem. You don't have that Oracle problem that you have to solve. And so you get all the benefits of like the speed and price of the DAG and transactions on top. And then they get to settle on the proof of work, but it requires a proof of work network where there is a script stack that's functional that can do that. So Nano itself, I don't love it, but I mean, I don't have anything against the Nano community or anything like that, but yeah. So short,
my perspective on all that. First off, I am a big fan of the fact that Nano and IOTA are not just doing the same old thing. They're breaking new ground. They're finding new things. And as such, because like Bitcoin hasn't been, I mean, it's what, 12 years old or something now. It's getting to be, it's going to start hitting the dating scene pretty soon. You're going to have to start chasing boys away from it, It's like, it's getting up there. And so it's, as far as I remember, I wasn't around in the early days of Bitcoin, but as far as I remember, it always worked pretty well. Like the economics were figured out pretty solidly. Just the tech was like, obviously there's improvements along the way, but the base was like really solid. And I think that with these DAG chains, there's a lot the DAGs. With these DAGs, there's a lot of, I would still consider them to be testnet right now, even though they're mainnet, because there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been figured out, and you're seeing that in the way that they've developed. Like, for example, IOTA, of course, was the big one, even though I think Nano is older, to be honest, but it just ride blocks, whatever. I think it was like, I think there was a white paper in like 2015 or something like that. I don't know. It was like a long time ago.
Yeah.
But basically,
it's hard to know because they both were small for a long time. So there's when they got popular versus when they actually were invented. I don't know the difference there.
Of course. So the thing
Yeah.
with so IOTA, I'll tell the IOTA story before going into Nano. I actually know more about Nano than IOTA, but so
Mhm.
IOTA came onto the scene saying, oh, no fees, all decentralized, all that kind of stuff. And it ran into some problems really quick, as far as I remember, where you had irreconcilable differences between bits of the DAG, between bits in the tangle. Like, you needed some kind of overarching global consensus model for everything to come together, which, a proof of work model does, or a proof of stake model does, or whatever. And so, as an interim step, what IOTA implemented was a coordinator, a centralized node to just
Yep.
be the arbiter of everything. And of course, that's no good. Put a thing to make it work while they're figuring it out.
Yep.
And the thing is, now they're transitioning to a different system, which I don't think is completely like finished as far as like I think there's still some up in the air bits about it. So if whatever I say is completely wrong, please correct me. But I believe they're allowing people to it's sort of like a proof of stake ish thing, but basically they're allowing people to stake money that then
Hmm.
generates something called mana, which so it's this little like proof of stake kind of thing in it's again now you're going back to principles of proof of work versus proof of stake. And so as far as I know with Nano, uh, Nano uses I keep on forgetting the term for it, but
Hmm.
basically it's like a delegated proof of stake at the end, which really annoys
Yep.
people when they hear it. I don't care. It's kind of what it is. Anyone can run a Nano node, and the top
Yep.
node can just pick a node they want to back. And so then those things all become, the delegated proof of stake, but it's not really proof of stake, but kind of. And there
Yep.
you go. They process all transactions. And which reminds me of the old spaceman meme about like, looking down at Earth and just like, wait, so it was all delegated proof of stake this whole time? And then there's Dan Larimer, always was.
Always right. Absolutely.
So network to a halt because of a spam attack, which was supposed to not be able to happen, but it happened anyway. And they're figuring out ways of dealing with it. And I really have to check with what they've done to fix it today. But the thing is, there's a few key things that. Oops, tap the microphone there. There's a few key things that I think these completely different and feeless, especially networks, have to figure out. Which the big thing is, if you something costs money, there's no cost behind doing things, then you have a spam problem. And Nano, of course, made people do a little bit of proof of work, and I think IOTA did too, but Nano is where I know more about. Made them do a little bit of proof of work in order to broadcast transactions, but
Yep.
apparently it wasn't enough, or they figured out ways that, all right, we'll overwhelm the network, and it won't really cost us real money to the same degree. And of course, you could always do like a botnet or something where you're taking over space on other people's devices, so it doesn't actually
Right.
cost you money to do. So there's some untestable of the fee will be hard to get over. And on the other side, you're not paying these staker nodes, even though they don't stake their own money, other people. You're not paying them anything.
Yep.
So you're trusting that they're just going to, have everything
It's
run the network.
altruistic.
And like I can imagine someone who is very malicious would decide to run a ton of nano nodes and give them like fun and colorful names and keep better uptime than the other ones, like at a loss, right? And get people to pledge their credits behind them and then use that to like rule or attack the network. And then people find out and they're like, oh, we're going to pledge to another node. Oops, surprise, he owns that one too. Because there's no anti-Sybil mechanism for running the node. Just so there's just a lot of unanswered questions to that thing. So I'm really happy that Now's out there doing stuff.
Yep.
I don't consider it a finished product today.
Is the overlay, like it works really well as an overlay network, but I don't think it can work as a base layer network. I also really don't like anything that is even in the ballpark of proof of stake
Mm-hmm.
consensus because the incentives just don't work. Like it's the equity model, which people are used to. Like you buy some and you have you then have value that you accrue other value from, and if you have the most equity, then you're the richest person, and that's just kind of that's ultimately how we got governments and central banks as just an extension of the equity model. So I really don't like it in distributed consensus, because I believe it will lead to the same thing if it's successful. So for me, it starts with sort of a philosophical, ideological place, but then it it also just it breaks down as an extension of that, is that you're getting rich regardless, and so you don't really have a whole lot of reason to improve the network either. You know, like if you do more work for the network, you're not necessarily rewarded for it more than if you just did other work somewhere else and bought more coins and then used it to just accrue more coins. It's just, so the incentives, I don't like them. I know that delegated proof of stake breaks it down a little bit differently, but it's a very weird balance of things that I don't like how it plays out in my head anyways.
Yeah, and that's the thing about economic incentive actual project. They could be the very same technical things could be wildly different. Just like we're talking about with Bitcoin, of it keeps going up in value, and so much of it is still block reward and not fees at this point that, you know, it just kind of works even though it doesn't, sort of thing. And then any new project, you cannot make fee based because there will be no security, no infrastructure, no nothing. If it's
Right.
not, I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit that you can't, but there's challenges. There's a reason why Satoshi decided to do the block reward. That's another thing that DAG coins, as far as I know, technically, all the coins have to be created at the Genesis block. Forget how an IOTA decided to distribute them, but Nano did it through some sort of a faucet thing. And it's a little bit like, it's kind of like through proof of work if you think about it, because you just like,
Right.
you run a CAPTCHA thingy to mine it.
Yeah, you
and
gotta
it's
do it. And in fact, I remember getting is it Rye blocks or Ray blocks? I would have said Ray blocks,
called
but
something
I'm probably wrong.
It's Nano now. That's
Yeah, but at the time, like I recall the faucets. I definitely got some myself that way. So I was like, oh, okay, well, get a little bit.
yeah.
And you know, and then, you know, that's all well and good. Like, again, I don't have any ill will. I don't like how the economics play out, and I guess it's more of a warning to them.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, ultimately, I like the idea as an overlay network, and this is for high throughput calculations and distribution of stuff on top of the proof of work. You know, and it's like, hey, Nano or anybody else, if you want to build your network on top of a proof of work, then BSV will have you. So, and you can be like a hybrid POS POW thing or whatever. But
Yeah.
I don't know that, but that's just where my head's at. Like, that's where I would always go, is like, well, find a proof of work chain that can deal with our traffic without causing us issues. So
That might be a good like spicy video title in the future is Nano the real Lightning Network?
right.
Because imagine if you did put Nano on top of BTC, for example.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, wouldn't work actually.
yeah, but you know what I'm saying, stuff like that. And that's an interesting thing about people, like when you're designing systems, they're designed some way and they will end up another way. And there's a completely different way right now anyway. And so, like we're talking about the proof of work thing, people's accurate of the present day situation on BTC, but it's not the way it was designed to be. And in the end, when you have most of it just processing transactions, potentially lower hash rate than today, but a much higher potential hash rate in case of actual security emergencies, it's a completely different situation. And the same goes for proof of stake, right? The biggest that I'm most confident about, that I like, the aspect that I defend the most, is decentralization of coin supply, which is I mean, it's not perfect with proof of work either, but it's just so nightmarish with everything else. Like everything else, you have to start with all coins ever, and other people have to buy in from those people to get permission to participate in this decentralized network. And of course, so that's why, you know, Ethereum, I'm pretty sure they were thinking about proof of stake when they launched Ethereum, right? Like it wasn't in the back of their heads.
He was on stage. He was a co-founder of Ethereum, which there's like a dozen of. But he was on stage with Vitalik Buterin probably a year and a half ago, and he said exactly that. He's like, "Oh, we knew Ethereum couldn't scale the way we designed it, but we knew that if we put this out, we'd raise enough money to be able to redesign it in a way that we could." And it's like, That's like that means that,
That's a
that
little
the
fraudulent.
entire knew that they needed to do something very different to make Ethereum scale. But what an admission.
Yeah, that's a very strange thing to admit, of course, but also like proof of stake, as far as I know, was in their idea for a long time. It's
Right.
so I kind of think that to have a well distributed coin supply, you kind of need proof of work because otherwise, just like
I agree. Yeah.
you need something that separates the token holders some degree of centralization no matter what project you have. But just the fact that anyone in the world can run a machine and get some Bitcoin of any kind, or they
Yep.
can design a machine from scratch that's a better ASIC without anyone else who owns or is involved with Bitcoin. The fact that you can makes it so much better than where you literally cannot. And
Yep.
I think that proof of stake models need to have some sort of a proof of work method to distribute the coin, the
Mhm.
initial coin. Now, the thing about the proof of stake model, that like the rich getting richer type of a deal, that's also much more of a coin emission problem than it is purely a proof of stake problem. Just like in the early days
Yep.
when there's no coins out there, everyone who has them just sitting on there, they're processing like 2 transactions a second if they're lucky,
Right.
and they're just
Yep.
sitting on this big like dragon's hoard of riches that they're just growing on and doing kind of nothing for. And of course, in the
Mhm.
long term, when you have almost no block reward anymore, the coin emission's gone pretty much to zero. Then how fundamentally different would a proof of stake staker be from a proof of work miner? Because they both probably need to build to run specialized hardware or nodes or whatever in order to, and the only difference is the proof of work miner will be more specialized in terms of the hardware because they have to some opportunity cost of their capital
Yep.
in order to
Right.
then still just run the business and run the actual the proof of work.
And at scale, I mean, I guess we don't really know what it'll look like, but Satoshi actually talked about it quite a bit. Like he
Hmm.
pictured running specialized equipment like GPU rigs and all that. And he said this before there was ever even a block mined on Bitcoin. So he very clearly pictured, a lot of the things that we see today. But yeah, when we're, what is all I guess we probably won't be able to see what it's like in 100 years unless technology for life extension gets a
Oh,
lot better. But
you're not in the cult of anti-aging, are you?
I no, I'm not.
Not
I don't
counting
know.
on that immortality.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna pull a Roger and freeze my body and
I'm not into the cryo thing. I personally think that like if they can make me live forever while I'm still alive, that's good. If they need to do other stuff, well, you know, duplicate my brain onto an electronic device, maybe. I don't know. I
yeah,
don't
no,
care.
no
But like
thanks.
also very, very at peace with the fact that I'm probably gonna die someday, and we all do, and it's fine. But
Yeah.
that's a completely different conversation.
Mhm.
Do you think that how much of that tweet do you think is serious? How much of it do you think is like honest and like that he's literally trying to manipulate the market? And how much do you think is fucking around? Just having fun on Twitter as one.
On him. Um, I mean, who would he even confer with? Like, that's the thing. Like, who would these Doge devs be if that was an actual thing? So, I mean, I'm sure he's got some decent software guys there. I mean, they should just take over the GitHub repo and do whatever the hell they want. So, that all just sounds like a weird way to have people picturing him like flying in a Doge plane to, some like Teletubby looking homeland where everything is a Shiba.
This was an interesting super chat right here. $1 in BCH. What would have to happen for Kurt to start promoting BCH again? Which probably wouldn't happen, I'm assuming, but it is interesting to think about the conditions that would have to happen for something like that to happen. So, what do you think?
Um, I mean, that'd be a rough sell. Like I wanted to be a Bitcoin casher. I didn't even see myself. The culture of BSV for me wasn't even really the place that I wanted to be. So
Mm-hmm.
it really came down to the fact that the way the hash war went down. Like I thought we were coming into this for an honest fight for the ticker, and
Hmm.
the rolling checkpoints, and I felt stabbed in the back, frankly.
Mm.
So I don't know that I could trust the Bitcoin Cash people ever again. And it's unfortunate because I considered a lot of them friends too. But more than anything, I I don't know. I mean, abject failure of BSV somehow, like, and by failure I mean like chain death.
Yeah.
So, like, if it just went away, then I guess Bitcoin Cash would probably be a place to look for some camaraderie. But honestly, I think I'd probably just be done at that point. Like, I've I said this actually before the hash war that, like, if we lose, I just don't want to be part of it anymore. Like, I'm very excited about a completely unbounded Bitcoin, and that's what excites me for philosophical reasons. And
Yeah.
so, could I join any other community? Like, I don't know. I would probably just go on and do completely other things. Frankly, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Which is
it's a
kind
hard,
of
it's a hard one.
that's kind of what the rest of the world is doing with their lives anyway. They're doing other things. There's only a couple like
Right.
crazy people like us that are like, oh, let's
Yeah.
get into this radically new technology that's still not hyper new and still no one kind of use.
Yep.
Yeah, the thing with so I did get a little live chat question that did not pay me for it, but that's fine. That just said, even with Amari being gone, like, does that change the thing? Like, because a lot do, and a lot of those choices made by Amari and company were the ones that prompted the BSV people to not like that anymore. It wasn't so
Sure.
much the rest of them. And
Mhm.
so now that that's gone, it's not exactly the same Bitcoin Cash. But yeah, so
Yeah.
how much if anything changes with Amari being gone?
Um, I mean, I still don't like the development ethos in Bitcoin Cash now.
Mm,
So, like, Roger is someone, for example, that I feel like I could have a kinship with. Like, Roger and I have actually spoken in just the last couple of months, just briefly. I mean, we're cordial,
yeah.
and he's someone I respect as a businessman, and I think he's also actually a real big blocker too. But I see the comments he puts on. He gets shouted down hard in
Mm.
the RBTC sub, and it's like,
I get
okay,
downloaded 0 every time. It's the new RBTC or our Bitcoin, and
right.
people get so salty when I point that out, but it's kind of true.
And so, I look at that and say, maybe there are some people that I get along with in the Bitcoin Cash community, the big blocker people, but it still really seems dominated by this notion that Bitcoin needs to be put together in piecemeal and take little baby steps. And I am everyone who is free from his madness. And frankly, I think if it wasn't for Amori, we
Hmm.
probably would all still be together. I think, today Tau mining and Matterpool and Mempool and these BSV exclusive miners and stuff would be Bitcoin Cash miners, and we would be working to have them negotiate with each other is just always going to lead to a literally guns to the head duel. So it's that was never going to work. But yeah, I really think Bitcoin Cash needs to really take a very deep and fundamental look at why they exist and what is the point, because they used to be, Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin. How many times did we hear that back in the day? And now you even see the language at places like bitcoin.com. Like, they removed the word Bitcoin from everywhere that wasn't talking about BTC, and now they use the word crypto or cryptocurrency. And so they've just kind of they've softened their narrative,
Hmm.
and that's more palatable to the crypto kumbaya culture. But I don't think that's a way to win a battle to become cash for the world. And I think you gotta fight, like, the war needs to be won completely in order to actually win the war. So
Yeah, I get that. I'm wondering if that's actually if there was like a change of heart, because Roger is a fighter, right? He's just a
yeah.
fighter through and through. Always has been, always will be. I
Mhm.
wonder if there's a change in tone based on you see the market the way it is. I mean, money's clearly flowing a lot to BTC, but not only, but a lot to Ethereum and a lot to other projects and a lot of stuff built on other projects. And I wonder if it's more of a, handwriting on the wall, seeing that this is going to be an agnostic space, at least for a while. There's not going to be a clear contender like we used to think. And I just happy to be in there, just happy to be doing what you can. And it's kind of funny because we talk about, which project do you support and stuff. And like, obviously I was huge into Bitcoin before. And then, as everyone knows, stuff happened. And so I was looking for the next, make my position to use like bore the crap out of everyone listening except for you and use like a jujitsu reference. I'm, when you're in top side control and you're trying to hold the person down, that's not always the best thing to do because they can sometimes bump you, like figure out, and you're just like, I'm just going to see where they end up and find my opportunity. So that's kind of my idea on the crypto markets is or the crypto space in general, I'm doing the best I can with what I have. And that's one reason, running Lightning Node, because there's always a slight possibility that, enough custodial people onboard millions of people to a custodial Lightning network that's operable with the non-custodial parts of the Lightning network. And for a while, this is how you spend crypto. And so I'm kind of in there. I'm kind of here. I'm kind of used there, still on Twitch, right? I'm like
Right.
but I'm just like laying on to seeing when it stops tumbling around, where the market ends, and then that'll be it. It's kind of like, let the free market decide for me, not what I believe, not my values, not my convictions, but just
I get that.
where.
And like the diversification of your portfolio and mitigated risk and blah blah blah. But that's one separate thing, and I think that's fine. And I still have a little bit of like the other Bitcoin forks. I still have a bit
Behind the tree, like,
right, like where is it though? But the thing is like you don't see this in other industries. So it's like, by all means, like I can have respect for like the things that happen in Dash, for example, have a self-sustaining ecosystem and they take their own project seriously. Like I do not believe they are scammers. I don't agree with everything that they're up to, but I take them at their word that they intend to be what they say they are, and they're working toward that goal. And so, at the very least, I can break bread, have a handshake, ask how things are going. Not assume I'm being
what's funny about that perspective is I feel the same way about a lot of Lightning Network users now. Now,
interesting.
It's strange to use a custodial wallet to send two things just so they can tweet about it, and that's it. But there's like a whole subset of like Bitcoin's meant to be spent of like peer-to-peer digital cash Lightning people who, which is very, like if you just use something that's on chain, you see how much better it is. But let's just forget that for a second. They're actually honestly trying to make this work. And they get in fights with people that tell them like, why would I spend it? And, like they get fights like, and same thing with the Nano people, right?
Sure.
And they're doing their thing and they're trying exactly how much money I have. Like the privacy problem with, an account-based coin like Nano or Ethereum, let's be honest, is pretty insane. And I can't really feel comfortable about that. But, have at it. Figure it out. Most projects will fail under the weight of their own misguided ideas. And I don't have to waste any breath to like make that happen. I just got to sit and do my own thing in the meantime.
Well, and this is what I mean about like the crypto kumbaya. Like there's a big difference between like, me and you have been friends for years and we've never been huge advocates of the same projects, but like that's irrelevant to our relationship as people who like each other and, have other things in common. But like, you see the same thing. Like imagine going to like let's say the Chicago Auto Show. It's the biggest auto show in the world. And you go over into the Chevy area and nobody ever uses the word Chevy and they don't use the brands of their cars. And they just talk about like the auto industry. Well, the auto industry has allowed us to do this. And the auto industry, it's the same way that I feel about people that talk about crypto. Like, and it's like, look, dude, like what is the thing you care about here? Because if you just care about the crypto industry, then you need to be like an industry lobbyist or something. And, like that's, people don't think this way about other businesses or other Even other like networking protocols don't have like advocacy groups like this. And
Yeah.
so like I mentioned, Bitcoin.com. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what the hell, Roger? Like you were the dude who was hard in the paint about what Bitcoin crypto is capable of doing. And it's like, for crypto, what? Like, what are we talking about? Like, they are very different competing protocols.
Yeah. And that's the thing about crypto is I'm very pro. I would consider myself. I'm definitely not like a hashtag yes all crypto. I'm like
Mhm.
most hashtag almost no cryptos, but we'll see as they materialize. Like there's a handful of projects. Like it's been this year that I finally that they'll ever figure out the whole scaling thing, which also makes me famous. But I'm just saying once Dex the whole Dex thing and DeFi started rolling real finally, and then Library when they started getting tens of millions of users per month doing all this stuff and there's a lot of people. In fact, someone did a little hyper chat, not on this one, but on the previous one. I was talking about some other coin or Bitcoin or something. They're like, "Oh, that sounds complicated." I've never had Bitcoin. I've only had library credits. It's like, oh, you're bringing new people in straight from the whatever.
It's awesome.
And like, there's that. I always talk about BSV. I've not here and there. It's a very small. That's what I mean by crypto. It's just like there's a few. There's a very few, but there's a few.
And I get that, and again, like library is a really good example of a really good idea. Like that's just a good thing. Like I think it would be better if it was an application built on a different proof of work, but whatever. Like things shook out the way they did. The Bitcoin Civil War created 9,000 little fiefdoms that should have just been all connected to the biggest proof of work.
Like consolidation at some point in the future between all these chains. It'd be hilarious is if like all crypto use cases like did not really pan out except for the library one. And then library became the number one blockchain over time. Everyone is using this as money because they were already doing stuff. And they're like, well, let's build usernames on top of it. Oh, we already kind of have it. Oh, let's start building DeFi on top of that would be hilarious. But
crazier things have happened.
Yeah. Well, so the file crazy thing here, we're talking about, unpleasantries and as far as like the nasty people in the space that. So let's talk about CZ, right? Binance probed by U.S. as money laundering tax sleuths bore in. They're cooperating fully with investigations with the DOJ and the IRS. Yeah, so I know you have opinions on Binance, so why don't I just let you get this thing started, and then we'll see where we go from there.
I mean, Binance is a fascinating company. CZ is a brilliant businessman in that he capitalized. Yes. Well, I mean, he solidified it. He solidified that that's what the crypto industry was. And now, I mean, he's the face of it. And I mean, good for him. He's probably made $50 billion off of being that guy. But ultimately, I mean, he's been a light fugitive from the law since the beginning. He's been in 3 countries in 4 years. I believe it was Hong Kong, Japan, Malta, and he's been hopping around to avoid regulation. He's the largest acceptor of Tether. Tether is itself a gigantic scam. I think any honest person can admit that it's a scam. Maybe it's a valuable scam, and we can all benefit from it or whatever. But it's
even
still
crypto needs its own fiat, right?
Right. And then ultimately, like, there's a lot of evidence that he's done a lot of really nasty, like he's done laundering for a lot of really nasty people that need to clean their coins, because coin join kind of stuff doesn't really work by itself. You need a lot of liquidity, but you don't need any of it all or at all if you can send your money to Binance and then have Binance withdraw back to you clean coins. And so that's a side business that a lot of people also kind of just know that Binance does, but nobody really talks about very much. And if you do, you're just a fudder. You're just, like you just don't get it. You don't get Bitcoin, and governments are bad, which is something a lot of people can agree with in a basic sense. But it's like, well, yeah, but so are human traffickers, and like Let's not decide to be the worst thing with our freedom. So, like, Binance, man, they've got a heck of a toll to pay at some point, but
Yeah,
hard to root for the IRS.
danger has been dangerously close to being the crypto space, like
Mhm.
a few times, like running everything. And I don't think it's from like a megalomaniacal point of view, like he just like set up. I just think any successful businessman wants to be more successful and just like you know yeah, just kind of take it to wherever it could go. And
Yep.
basically, he's kind of a throwback in a weird way. Do you remember in the early days of crypto when there was
Mhm.
just like no rules? And even like the fiat on ramps had like no oversight basically at all. And then
Yep.
there was like when old school Shapeshift was doing like the swaps and no one cared. And then the
Yep.
world's a different world today, but like not for CZ, it isn't. It's still the same
Right.
world. Newsy stuff, the weird letting slip about, oh, we can just roll back the Bitcoin chain and stuff. And just a bunch of stuff like that is just, he's still that guy. He's still today. He's like, he's a throwback. And
Mhm.
I think that this is one of those first things where it's like, okay, I guess the world is moving on, and I'm going to be part of the new world, even though it's doesn't behoove me or whatever. So
Right.
what I wonder is, yeah, I wonder if this is just CZ becoming clean after he's been dirty for so long, and
Oh,
therefore he'll just be another exchange amongst the many, or if it's like the beginning of the end, like the walls are closing in and his business model is not for the future.
yeah. I don't know. It's hard. I mean, it's a really hard one to figure out. Like he's I would think, if the big party's going to end, I think it could look a lot like what Tether's looked like thus far. I mean, they paid what, an $18 million fine a few months ago and acted like, well, see, yeah, we did a little bit wrong, but we're good. Like that's always a big calculation in your business. It's like, well, how much fraud can I get away with and make it that I'm still profitable after paying my fines and like maybe even a little bit of prison time. I get some people that are like, oh yeah, I mean, if I could be a billionaire when I get out, I'll do 18 months in prison or so like I don't know. It kind of depends how steely you are about your business model. If he's comfortable with whatever the consequences are, yeah, I mean, whatever. He goes
Mm-hmm.
legit, pays maybe he pays a $50 million fine. I mean, that's nothing to Binance. Like,
Yeah,
hey man, yeah, here's 50 million bucks. I'm real sorry. Slap me on the wrist. Like, peace out, regulator man.
maybe
And
even 100 million. I don't know. Like, who
he's
knows
he's
what's
probably
done.
he's making an absurd amount of money. $100 million fine, whatever. I don't think he wouldn't lose any sleep. At least
Yeah,
not the way I see it.
that is. It's one of those things where the old like this is. I'm struggling to find the exact right words to describe the phenomenon, but
Mhm.
no one likes the wild. No one except for criminals really like the Wild West era of where
No.
everything is and everything's just who greased whose wheels and stuff like that. And so there's this clamor for sanity, for normalcy, for regulation, for whatever it is. And then
Mhm.
when that happens, it you're still greasing wheels. It's still like, oh well, you still have the shrewd cost benefit analysis of breaking the law, where you're now like, well, now I'm living under the law. I just got to like calculate how much it costs to break it, and can I probably you're just run by pirates and bandits and people like recruiting child soldiers and all this horrendous shit, and it's just like it's just all corruption, all bribes, all this and that, and then like, okay, well, finally we get a stable government that still runs in corruptions and bribes and stuff, but at least it's stable.
Right.
It's kind of one of those things. It is maybe one of the most cynical things you'll hear me say for a while, but yeah,
Mhm.
it's. I think that that's kind of where it's moving towards is paying off of, you know, paying off of people and stuff like that, and rules for me, not for thee, and all the same stuff
Yep.
that people cause people to clamor for it to be regulated. But at least it will become corrupt Wild West in a more controlled way, so that people will be able to sleep at night. And it is what it is, right? Huh?
I think that's fair. Well, and it is. That's how people feel about it. It's just like, I mean,
Hmm.
that's what a lot of people are doing right now with their whole ethos of all of this is like, I know it's a scam. I know this
Hmm.
is all crap. It's all made up. Like it's a Ponzi scheme from the get go. But hey, what an opportunity! And like that's
Yeah, I
you know,
mean, at some point, the Doge days will be behind us. The
yep.
Doge days of summer 2021. At some
Mhm.
point, they'll be behind us. People will still play the casino. People will still lose a hell of a lot of money. People will still make a lot of money. Maybe not as
Yep.
astronomically as much as before. And things will go on, but it'll be like, you know, everything is stable and normal. Roll the credits kind of feel to it, even though nothing has really changed. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Well, that sounds like a well. Before I do that, just this guy Pedro Pozo, who was a new guy who popped into like the Dash forums and stuff, and then started watching my stuff. So I want to acknowledge a new fan. He just says, "Hi there. I love your video about Elon Musk's tweet. It brings a really good perspective. Do you think that he could be giving fuel to a big alt season coming?" Last one, last one we'll cover. What do you think?
I mean, we've already had a pretty big alt season, so um, I don't know. I mean, anything's possible. Like if stuff starts refueling, it's entirely possible we have another blow off the top event.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, cool. I'm cool with that. But uh, I don't know. Anything's possible. That the market is starting to look like it's ready to be done with these crazy pumps, but I don't know. We live in unprecedented times too. So I'm a predictor guy actually, and I'm finding it increasingly difficult to predict the future here. So
Yeah, I mean, based on my general feeling to that is based on 2017, which was a crazy year. It was the
mhm.
ICO year, all this kind of going insane, and people say, "What happened?" And you want to talk about the fundamentals, but you're like, you know what? This is just people gambling in it. You can't
Yeah,
even, in good faith, say, "Oh, my favorite project that's very solid and built on fundamentals." You can't say that the fundamentals are pumping it because they aren't right now. It's just being pumped, and like I was starting to feel that this bull market was like not that crazy. I mean, there's a little bit of DeFi craziness, but that's like all new tech, and it seems to have quieted down a little bit.
yeah,
And then I just the craziness of the bull cycle wasn't manifesting itself.
yep,
And then the Doge Father came, and that all
yeah,
got changed. So
yep,
if Doge like that's why the pillow is there because we're in these Doge certain times, right? It's where
mhm,
we're at. We're in the age of wow. It's in the top five still, right? I think like Doge in
yeah,
the
could be.
top, considering what's in the top, whatever. Doge in the top 30 to 50, right? Remember,
Yeah,
everything was like hit fever pitch in like December, January,
yep,
and
yeah,
it's
going
like,
into winter. Yeah, I think the top was the very end of December. It was like right before Christmas.
yeah. So what? Like it's just the bull run's winding down now. I mean, nah, I don't think so. Not with all this
Yeah.
nonsense. Not with all the
I yeah, I agree. We've yet to have that total blow off the top moment. However, people should be aware that as a rule in an adoption cycle, that every bull market should be a little less spectacular than the previous. So
yeah. I hope so.
like
Like I
oh,
I don't like these astronomical highs even when they benefit me because I don't like the dumps that happen afterwards and the
right.
severity of the inclines make it hard to get things done. It's just like, oh,
Mhm.
why would I sell now because it's going to go up, or why would I take it because if it goes down, and like I
Right.
just want it to all work. But we did have one last little hyper chat here from Mad Marmalade. Mad Marmalade. It just says pirate chain all the way. Do you know much about? Arr?
Not really.
I'll have to
I know
actually
it's a
look into it.
yeah, I know it's an anonymity chain. As if I recall, they forked a number of things away from Monero, but
But added
also
like,
has some unique stuff. But I'm not an expert, so
mm,
I shouldn't be the guy to ask.
yeah, well, that's kind of where I'm at too. I just heard about it. I just know Jeff Berwick's pumping it, and he's a savory character. But that's all I know.
Yeah,
That's all I know. It could have the best tech, but I don't know why you'd put best tech behind like a meme called sweet little spice in our legit thing. So I'll have to actually look into it before I say anything. All right. Well, anyway, let's wrap this up. Any last words?
No, not really. I think people out there. I guess I should have some words
Shill
of
your
wisdom
Coin
here.
Geek stuff and all that.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody that's interested, I do a weekly live stream myself. I do it on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock Central Standard Time. It is the Coin Geek Weekly live stream. We have a live troll box, so live Q&A. I have a producer that sits and just filters through questions nonstop. Sometimes we answer 100 questions an episode, just for the hell of it. We also typically have guests. I'll take guests from anywhere. But
now, did this show that we're on now start at 1 Central? Or was it 2 Central? What time was it?
It was 2. It was 2
Okay.
Central.
So it's an hour before my show, but on Tuesdays, where I don't have a show.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll have to jump into the troll box and stuff. Do you guys have any like hyper chat type, super chat type stuff?
No, we use YouTube. So you can use the YouTube chat, or you can comment on Periscope, or I believe Facebook comments also will come straight through, so I can read them.
Yeah.
So pretty cool.
Right.
But yeah, otherwise, I'm an author at coingeek.com. I'm on Twitter all the time. If anybody's interested in anything else, I am Kurt Wuckert Jr. like literally everywhere across social media. And I'm happy to chat too. So, I mean, send me a Twitter DM if you want to ask me again, come on, Kurt, you got to be a Bitcoin cat. Just playing. But seriously, I'll answer questions and chat. I'm literally here in Bitcoin to like change the world, but like make friends the whole time. So don't be afraid to reach out.
What was it? What was that joke I saw about like, what if the real stimulus was the friends we made along the way? It's like, okay.
I like it.
Well, I think you need to pay bills too, and friends don't always do that, but whatever.
Right.
All right. Okay, so next week, at the same time, of course, we're going to have the rundown again with a yet-to-be-specified person. Probably going to be less awesome than Kurt, but, I'm sorry. I can only pull out this kind of magic once in a while. And then immediately following will be the Dash podcast. And so, yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys then. Check in on Kurt. Ask him, throw your hand cash handles at him on Twitter like the dirty, grubby little beggars that you are. And I'm sure something good will happen from you, like 10 years of good luck. So anyway, I'll see you guys all next week. Enjoy yourselves, and happy Friday again.